when I do these monologues, what do I do? Sit here and do them?
You will sit there and do them.
I can't stand?
No. You'll sit there and do them.
Know that we have divided into three. These all monologues of intensity.
Lower your tone, though.
I can't lower my tone. I do the monologues the way I have to do them. You want a proper, I can't do these monologues sitting down. This is not, I walk to the street naked. These are powerful fucking King Lear monologues. They have to be done right. They're loud. Know that we have divided into three our kingdom, and 'tis our fast intent to shake all cares and troubles from our age, conferring them on younger strengths, while we, unburdened, crawl toward... I could do them down. I could do them sitting.
Welcome to a new edition of our show, ladies and gentlemen. We have the great pleasure to have with us today a performance artist, poet, philosopher, musician, and actor, Copernicus. Thanks for being with us on our show.
Hello.
We're here, of course, Copernicus, to discuss your upcoming performance as Lear in a new production of King Lear. And what I wanted to start with is how someone like you, so well known as a downtown performance artist, international performance artist, who's always performed his own work, came to play a version of Shakespeare's King Lear. How did that come about?
They had to twist my arm for a long time. Well, I did one of my shows when I started doing my show solo, and Chris Sanderson saw my solo show, and I think this was 1992 or so, and he just made a specific note in the back of his head. And in 1995 he called the Village Voice to try to locate me, and because he was doing Lear, and asked my agent Onaje Royston to Voice called me and I called him, and he said he wanted me to do Lear. I was not interested in Lear. I had no interest in doing Lear, and
now, who is Sanderson, incidentally?
Christopher Sanderson is the director of Guerrilla Rep. I believe he founded Guerrilla Rep.
And he found you through The Voice?
No, he found me by going to Synchronicity Space and seeing one of my shows.
And how did he happen to end up there? Did you find out by any chance?
I guess he's a guy that goes to shows.
How old is Sanderson?
35, 32, something. He's about 35. He's a young man.
What made him think from that performance, do you think,
well, the point first
that you would be an appropriate Lear?
Oh, I don't know that, but the point is that I was not interested at all in doing that. To me, it was an immense task. To me, all literature before the 19th century is wasted because of it does not express my philosophical point of view, and to me, all literature before the 20th century is historical literature. It's not. If you want to read that stuff, you read it for historical reasons, and that was my attitude, and I was not interested in Shakespeare or doing Shakespeare or giving any energy to such an enormous task. To me, it sounded like an enormous task. And my agent, Onaje Royston, said to me, I spoke to Mr. Sanderson, I checked out the company, they have a reputable company, and I think that if you did this, that it would expand your abilities. But I still said, no, I'm not interested. I have too much to do. I need to do a new album, and the thing he said to me, he says, you mean you won't even go down to speak to the man?
Who said this?
Onaje Royston. He says, you won't even go down to speak to the man. So I said, okay, I'll go. I went down there, and he charmed me and actually talked me into it, and gave me a copy of the play, and I read the play, and I was taken over by this man Lear.
Tell us a little bit, if you might, about Mr. Sanderson and the guerrilla rep, if you would. What do
I'm
you
not
know?
the guy, I'm not an expert on Christopher Sanderson, although we have worked, in November we did about a month of work, and he's certainly a great director in terms of me dealing with him. As a director, I see that he's not my concept of a director. I've told this to him, that I'm more of a fascist director. If I was a director, I would say, you do this, you do that. He tries to get you to, tries to get you to find the right thing to do through yourself. He wants you to maybe lead you and guide you, but it must come out of you. And that right there was a wonderful, already I've learned something just through dealing with him on that level, where he tries to get the actors to find the right thing to do. So as far as Guerrilla Rep, I know they have produced Shakespeare in the past. They've been reviewed by the New York Times favorably, and their last Midsummer's Night Dream was reviewed by the Times. And
you know, do you have any specific impression about the outlook or philosophy of the guerrilla repertory theater? Is there something about it that somehow impressed you or charmed you, or made you want to go ahead with this?
Well, he had to charm me. He had to. I really had to be talked into this, and I really had to be talked, because I don't do things. I'm too old to be doing things that I'm not interested in, and he talked me into it, and I.
But tell us a bit about the group itself. What about it might have you found interesting?
You mean the group of people? Because we did work for a month together there, way back in November. You mean that the group of people of actors that were in Lear for that?
No, the history.
I don't know the history of Guerrilla Rep.
Yeah. Okay.
But they definitely have they are well known, and they have a very good reputation for doing quality work.
Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about the rest of the cast, if you might. Have you met any of your fellow actors?
Well, he's recasting.
Uh-huh.
He's recasting, and I don't know exactly who he's going to keep from. He had a cast in November, with which we did about a month of guiding work. We went through the entire play and did a reading, which was very helpful. And then he left me he said, left me for 4 months, and I've been for these December, January, February, March, April. It's 5 months of being with myself, being alone with Lear. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I'm not too sure who he has now for this new play. We start rehearsals in May 15th.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And then, which is within a couple weeks, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about, I mean, you've been with this play for several months now, from what you've said. Tell me a little bit about how you've gone about the process, preparing for this role.
Being alone with it, having all this time to be alone with it, and of course having that guidance that I was given in that month of November. The entire month we were like going to rehearsals four times a week or 5 times a week, almost sometimes. And
so there was a cast in November then.
Yep.
Already. And what led to the recasting, incidentally?
I'm not sure. I'm not part of that. I'm not part of that. I guess he was maybe he was checking things out. He was checking me out. He said, he says, well, he said I had the part, but of course if I went over the deep end, I wouldn't have it. But then I guess he was checking me out. I mean, this is an enormous task, and I guess he was just making sure. What he was doing.
So you had a month of rehearsals.
Right.
What did you learn from that?
And what I learned from that, first of all, he gave a direction to most of the scenes, and which was very helpful. I've got notes in it, and all the monologues he pointed out important things that had to be stressed in these monologues, and helped me understand the play better. Gave me lots of interesting points in the play that I personally wouldn't know.
Like what?
Well, explain, who is Lear?
Who is
this guy? You know, I mean, you don't get that in the play. You have to. I mean, it's there, but you don't need. Who is he? What kind? You know, this is the man that put England together through violence. You know, and
how did he do that?
the sword. You know, he went through war and brought this whole country together. And now he's getting old, so.
So is Lear a real figure, or is he a mythical figure, or a fictitious figure? What is he?
I think Lear is probably based on a real figure, and yeah, probably based. I mean, this is fiction, but it's probably based. England did have a king who brought it together, right? So this is a violent man. You had to do this through violence. This is the main thing. A violent man who's struggled, and he's tired now. You know, this is not a decrepit old man. This is a powerful man who's done his job, and he wants to, before he kicks off, he wants to have some fun. You know, and you know, and he's got 3 daughters, and he's.
You read the whole play, right?
Read the whole play?
Yeah.
Of course.
So we're going to get into a discussion of, you know, the themes of the play and so forth.
I'll do the best I can. I'm not an expert on Shakespeare or Lear.
It'll be in the context of how you.
I've read the play. I've known the monologues. I mean, for example, there's a monologue here that applies to what you were just saying. For example, I don't know if you're interested in that.
Which is that?
There's a monologue that.
In terms of what point that I made, incidentally.
Of how he's going to take care of the business of this dividing up of this kingdom.
Ah, yes. Why don't we go ahead with that then?
Yeah, well.
Set it up for us, if you would. Though.
Well, basically it's the beginning of the play almost, and Lear comes out, and everybody is there, and he comes to explain to them. He said,
"Meantime, we shall express our darker purpose. Give me the map there. Know that we have divided into 3 our kingdom, and 'tis our fast intent to shake all cares and business from our age, conferring them on younger strengths, while we, unburdened, crawl toward death. Our son of Cornwall, and you, our no less loving son of Albany, we have this hour a constant will to publish our daughter's several dowers, that future strife may be prevented now. The princes France and Burgundy, great rivals in our youngest daughter's love, long in our court have made their amorous sojourn, and are here to be answered. Tell me, my daughters, since now we will divest us both of care, interest of territory, cares of state, which of you, shall we say, doth love us most, that we our largest bounty may extend, where nature doth with merit challenge? Goneril, our eldest born, speak first.
And this is indeed what sets up the entire play.
It does.
Lear, after a full life as a monarch, a warrior, as you said, has decided to disinvest himself of his own kingdom. And he's chosen to divide it among his daughters, but he had a certain plan. How does he go about doing that?
Well, it's pretty much said in that monologue I just stated. He was going to divide it into 3.
Right.
To his 3 daughters. He had Goneril, Cordelia, and Reagan. Not Ronald Reagan. Reagan.
Reagan, his daughter, yes.
Right.
R-E-G-A-N, no A.
Right. And the two daughters, they sort of, the two daughters sort of tell him how much they love him. And of course, Cordelia is a little foolish. She's young. She's 16, supposedly, something like that. Well, I guess that's the director's interpretation. And she tries to be honest, you know. She's not going to go there and just say, "Oh, I love you most," like the others, like Goneril and Reagan. She says, "Well, you know, Father, I have to marry somebody. I have to love him too." The other daughter said, "I love you. I give you all my love." And so she's.
So why is that foolishness, though?
Well, you know, sometimes to be honest is foolish, and for her, it was foolish.
Because it's against her interest.
Yeah, for her, it cost her her life, her kingdom. It cost her a third of the kingdom. It cost the end of Lear. It cost the death of everybody. This is a tragedy. And she had just lied like the rest of them. Things probably would have been better. Let me tell you something. This play is a holy book. I mean, this is a work of genius. I mean, I was really impressed with this play. I thought.
But I beg to differ, perhaps, because the other sisters who hypocritically, you know, did exactly their father's bidding and professed this enormous love of him, this undying, unique, all-encompassing love. They too, you know, in some sense or another, were the victims of their own character, because they too died. One poisons the other, do they not?
Well, they. Well, so what can I say? So what do you want me to say? That she should have, I don't know. She was sincere. He didn't like her answer. And he got furious. And therein starts this tragedy. And there was another monologue, if you're interested, that I know that would describe this. I don't know if you're interested.
Sure.
Lear has a general with him by the name of Kent, who's been with him through all the wars.
Right.
And Kent knows Lear. Mm-hmm. Kent knows Lear. So he sees Lear getting furious at what how Cordelia gave their answer, you know. Mm-hmm. And Kent says, "Calm down, Lear, you know." Lear is a man who's got the power. This is a king. We don't know about kings in this country. We don't have kings. We threw a king out, and we don't let anybody have this power, this kind of power. So we don't know about this kind of person.
Right.
And that in itself is something to appreciate.
What should we know about this kind of person?
Well, this is someone who has all power, who can take a sword out and cut your head off and just shut it out right in the front of everybody, if he chooses. And no one will even whisper or raise it. So this is all power. So he says like this. He goes like this. Kent is telling him, "Calm down, man. Don't get angry at Cordelia. She's just a young kid, you know." He says,
"Peace, Kent. Come not between the dragon and his wrath. I loved her most and thought to set my rest on her kind nursery. Hence and avoid my sight. So be my grave, my peace, as here I give her father's heart from her. Call France, who stirs? Call Burgundy, Cornwall and Albany. With my 2 daughters' dowers, digest this third. Let pride, which she calls plainness, marry her. I do invest you jointly with all my power, preeminence, all the large effects that troop with majesty. our self-by-monthly cost, with reservation of 100 nights, by you to be sustained, shall our abode make with you by due turns. Only we still maintain the name and all additions to a king, the sway, revenue, execution of the rest, beloved sons, be yours, which to confirm this coronet part betwixt you.
So in a minute, he cuts out Cordelia. Instead of dividing his kingdom into 3, he takes Cordelia's third because she didn't answer properly, and zoop, she divides it into 2.
What do you think was on his mind when he did that? I mean, why did he do that? What kind of man is it that does that sort of thing? Is it?
There's a lot of things going on here. You can't just say that Lear is slipping, but you can say Lear is slipping.
How is he slipping?
Losing control. You get a certain age, you start making wrong decisions. You know about that.
Yeah. After the 90s, you know.
Well, I don't exactly know how old Lear is. I don't know if I'm that old, but I certainly grew this beard. I haven't had a beard in a long time, and I grew this beard for Lear. But you do slip a little bit, and he did slip. The very fact that he admits that he needs to divide up his kingdom, that he needs to take a break. It's been too much.
I always thought that monarchies like to keep their kingdom united, if not just to keep it united, even to increase it by marriage and so forth. I thought a little bit odd that they had to divide it this time.
Well, who is he going to give it to?
Perhaps just one of the daughters and their husband, just to keep it together, and then somehow,
well, remember in his original monologue, know that we have divided to 3. We will publish our daughter several dowers. Why? Why was he going to do that now?
Yeah, why?
That future strife may be prevented now.
Oh, because he was afraid that if he divided it, then they would fight among themselves.
In the end,
if you hadn't divided it.
Well, he divided it into 2, and they wound up fighting against themselves because Cordelia eventually marries the King of France, and he invades England with an army. Okay, so he wants to settle it. Okay, I'm here, I'm alive, I've got the power, and I'm dividing it out.
So is this somehow?
And this is all legal.
So this is related.
So that you guys don't start fighting after I die.
So it's somehow,
but they started fighting before he died.
Right. It's somehow related to the Norman conquest, perhaps.
You can't call on me. I don't know the historical relationships of. Don't forget what Shakespeare's writing 500 years after this. So I mean, what did he know?
Tell me though.
500 years after the conquest.
He knows what he knows, I guess, as they say.
Well, the thing is that they do say that Shakespeare wrote this stuff right off the top of his head. So I've only written one thing like that I really think was very good, The Lament of Joe Apples. And if he wrote this off the top of his head, this is genius. This is wonderful. This is an unbelievable play. People should see it just to understand it and to understand all the complexities. This applies this is what they call eternal art. 1,000,000 years from now, it applies. It applies to everyone. It applies if you're 16 years old. It applies if you're 90 years old. It applies if you're 30 years old. All the wisdom and observations of humanity, no matter what their age, it's just that way. Okay?
Now you've had a chance to really dig into the play, dig into your character, see the relationships. What do you see as the key character traits of Lear? What are his vices and his virtues? Now that
I actually thought about that. I actually thought about that question myself the other day, And I said, he loves truth. He does, but he really does. He loves truth. However, he has this ostrich quality of sticking his head in the sand. I don't know how you can say that. How do you express that? You love truth. You care about truth. You're not deceptive, but at the same time, you stick your head in the sand.
What is sticking your head in the sand imply?
Well, you can't see yourself, or you don't see yourself.
Is that his basic?
You know, I sometimes, very often, when I'm having conversations with people and I try to tell them about themselves, they get angry at me. And I always thought that, why are you getting angry at me? I'm doing you a favor. We can't see ourselves. You know, we think we can.
Do we want to see ourselves?
You don't grow. You can't grow unless you can see yourself objectively. And I don't think that anyone has that power to see themselves objectively. And sometimes we have to depend on other people who will be honest with us to tell us what they see. You know, I mean, here with Lear had Kent, right? Who was his guy who went through all the wars with him, and he was his main man. And who would tell him, and there's another monologue, there's another monologue there that actually applies to this. Kent was the man who told him, was his eyes, and told him the truth, that's a valuable thing to have near you, especially if you're a king. Somebody who's not afraid to tell you the truth. Hey, what are you doing, guy? You know? So he had already said, this applies. He had already told Kent, take it easy, Kent. And he explained why he got angry and he gave the money away. But Kent continues to get in his face in public. You're wrong, King. You're wrong. I beg you, don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do this. What you're doing is wrong. You're wrong. He says to him,
hear me, recreant. On thine allegiance, hear me. Since thou hast sought to make us break our vow, which we durst never yet, and with strange pride to come between our sentence and our power, which nor our nature nor our place can bear, our potency made good, take thy reward. 5 days do we allot thee for provisions to shield thee from diseases of the world, and on the 6th to turn thy head back on our kingdom. If on the 10th day following thy banished trunk be found in our dominions, the moment is thy death. Away, by Jupiter, it shall not be revoked.
So he's made his decision. Kent is out.
well, to show you another bad decision. Okay? It's another bad decision. This is the guy that's helping you to see, and you're having problems about seeing, and he threw away his honest daughter. His honest daughter takes off with the King of France because he doesn't want to see her. He says,
we shall never see that face of hers again. So be gone without our love, our grace, our benison.
he threw, get out of here. And so then and now he's thrown away Kent.
But if this is then, if Lear is then a man who loves truth so much, then how is it that he can't recognize it when it bites him on the bottom? In your opinion. And also, you know,
he's very childish. He's very childish. A very interesting thing is later on in the play, they actually throw him out. He's out in the woods. When he fights with Goneril, he fights with Ray. He's out in the woods, He has no place. They locked the bolt on. Get out of your boat. The king is not. And he actually begins to feel a feeling for poor people. And he begins to, he says, take physic, take pomp. All of this richness and this wealth is bull. He says, a real man is a man who can feel what a poor man, a wretch will feel. And he begins to, so what I'm saying, he's got an openness that a child has. But even though he's a king, he still feels there's this open honesty, which you admire in him. And this change of fortunes with him, he's never had an opportunity to think about things before. All he cared about was was unifying, conquering territory and unifying the country. But now, where he doesn't have to do that, he's able to open up. So you say, what was your question? Basically, the question is, why isn't he able to see
The truth.
the truth? As I said, when you're not able to see yourself, and you've gotten to an age where you slip. They say that your mind doesn't weaken when you get old. So this is a new thought, So why isn't he able to see the truth? Why don't you see the truth? Why can't I see the truth?
In general, do you see King Lear as a play about the ingratitude of children, or is there something more to it?
There's a lot more to it. I'm not quite sure. I've gone through this play and I've learned I've gone through all of Lear, I know without a book. I've lived with this for 5 months and by myself, so I've had time to think. I've had nobody tell me anything, which is I like. It's not about filial ingratitude. I mean, that's what he calls it, but that's one of the themes. This theme is about a lot of things.
Like what?
The play is so rich at this point. The play is so rich that this is not some simple play that's about one theme. This is a play that is so rich that I think it's very hard to say that King Lear is about any one thing. It's about many, many things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. I mean, there's millions of things that this play is about. That might be a very naive statement, and I'm sure that people who know the play are probably laughing in their sofas right now at what I just said.
Various of the characters in the play could be said to be, if you will, struggling with their identity. Lear, for example, over whether it's his crown that makes him something essential, and or whether it's something in him, something that's born in him, part of his personality. Edgar struggles with being identified as Gloucester's bastard son and conspires to get his due by tricking his father. Cordelia struggles with her integrity and, suffering for not wanting to flatter her father as her sisters do. What does Lear, the other characters, and perhaps even the audience, learn about the meaning of personal identity in the course of this play as it unravels, as the relationships become clear?
Well, I think he becomes a more complex person as this play progresses. Mm-hmm. He matures a lot. He's very much surprised about what's going on, what's happened to him. He thought he was going to go with his 100 knights and have a ball for the rest of his life. And in the end, it didn't happen. So he matured and you could see him maturing. As I gave you one example in his, I'm sure this man never even thought that there was such a thing as a poor person. I mean, he might have seen a beggar, what he calls a wretch, but he wouldn't think of that person as a wretch. Now he would think of that. He wouldn't even think of the economic. I thought he says in one of his monologues, I thought too little about this. He recognizes that. He even recognized I didn't give enough time to these poor people who didn't have enough to eat, who didn't have anything, because he's out in the storm. He's out in the storm, and he is feeling, what is a poor person who doesn't have enough to eat, and like me right now, he didn't have enough to eat, and who didn't have a roof over his head. What happens to them? So he matures a lot in many ways.
But it's not just that, though. I mean,
he matures in love and feeling. I'm sure he was probably was a bad father. He was too busy taking care of business, and so he probably, the relationship with his daughters suffered, except for Cordelia, who really, has this thing that we call love of father. She has that, and the other two. His power.
What I was more getting at is, once he's given up his crown, his power, and he finds his power constantly diminishing as his daughters seem to treat him with less than the respect due to a king. What does he find out about himself once that's gone? Who is he once he's given away all his power? What is he? Does he find out? Does he know? Does he search for that?
Yeah.
What does he find out?
Yes, he does. I don't remember exactly the monologue at this point. You have to understand that I'm not in production, and but he does find that out. This is one of the things in his maturing where he does see man on a stage and not worth very much. It's in one of his monologues. Mm-hmm. He comes to that. That's one of the maturing points that I'm sure he, as king, didn't know or never had time to realize. And very interesting, when they're going off to jail, he laughs. He's going off to jail with Cordelia, and he laughs at the fact that it won't make any difference if we're in jail. I mean, we'll be together, and you'll ask my blessing, I'll ask you for forgiveness, and we'll talk about who's in, who's out. So there he is. You see, now he's reached this. This is as 80-90% into the play. Who's in, who's out. He's showing this objectivity, which unfortunately he didn't have and wasn't able to produce for himself. So you see, I think you see an enormous maturing of this character all through the play as the play progresses. So the loss of this power turns him really into a philosopher, which I don't think he was before. He was a pure materialist. And I'll tell you something else. So excuse me, before you ask me what this play is about, I mean, simplistically you'll say filial ingratitude, but wait a minute. We're talking about a man that loses all his material wealth and in my opinion, turns into an interesting philosopher. Okay? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, what is this play about? The play is so rich. There's so many things that this play is about. Because this is a serious theme for me. I mean, as Copernicus, I mean, in terms of money, I mean, I'm constantly saying how, I mean, Jesus, everybody says this, that material things prevent you from seeing reality. And this is you can very much say that this is a wonderful play about that, how material things, when he lost his wealth, he began to feel love for his daughter, he began to feel compassion for the poor. He began to see the reality of man's position in the world. He began to become a real spirit. He wasn't a violent, materialistic beast. And
And we are all Lear in a sense. Wait a minute, Lear is not some special guy. We are all Lear. You're Lear, I'm Lear in a sense that we have our swords and we're out there killing and unifying the kingdom and acquiring material wealth. And in that process of doing that, we do not have time to care, to see, to grow philosophically. And I say that we should not have to go, that whole process should not be so destructive. The accumulating of material things, if that's part of your being, shouldn't be so spiritually destructive. Yes.
Is Lear a fool in the play as you see it? He's called a fool. Do you think that
Who calls him a fool?
The fool.
Oh, well, yeah. That's a wonderful relationship. It's another. You see, that's the fool is able to tell Lear these things while Kent was banished, but the fool is not banished. So the fool can tell all these things to the king. The king really loves the fool, and he really loves that character.
Why do you think that the king loved the fool, but was sort of angry at Kent for telling him the truth? He could sort of the same thing that Kent would tell him.
Well,
would tell him
because you see,
wittily.
nobody likes surprises. Nobody. You're my right-hand man. You do. I say, let's go to battle. We will go to battle and everything else. But keep your distance. Keep your respect. You know.
So it was the nature of the role of Kent, the subservient role.
He calls him a vassal.
Right.
So.
And he was.
He went past his place. Okay. And the fool has the right to say anything he wants. He can tell you, he can say anything he wants, and I mean, this fool in Lear is really rough. If I was the king, he tells him everything. He tells him the whole truth. The question that your original question is Lear a fool? Well, you have to. What is fool? What does fool mean to you?
Someone who makes unreasoned choices, perhaps?
The play is filled with unreasoned choices.
The fool has an interesting sort of monologue. He says, "Mark it, Nuncle." Nuncle is sort of like my uncle in Shakespearean. "Have more than thou showest. Speak less than thou knowest. Lend less than thou owest. Ride more than thou goest. Learn more than thou trowest. Set less than thou throwest. Leave thy drink and thy whore, and keep in door, and thou shalt have more than 2 tens to a score." And then Kent said, "This is nothing, fool." How do you see, in general, the relationship between Lear and the fool? And what do you think the role of the fool is in the play? What is he there to do, and how does he relate to Lear?
Whatever the fool does, he makes Lear feel good. He's the only one. The fool is his only exit. When he comes in, he says, "I have not seen him these 2 days." He hadn't seen the fool in 2 days, and he was missing him.
What draws him so much to the fool?
And then at the end, when they hang the fool, you know that the fool is vicious with Goneril and Reagan. The things he says, and at the end they hang him. "My poor fool is hanged," you know. And the relationship is one of it's a spiritual, it's a real spiritual relationship. I'm sure there would be fools who would not be able to achieve the relationship that this particular fool achieved with the king. He is courageous. He's not afraid to say what he has to say, and he says it in an interesting way. He makes the king laugh, in a sense, this fool has a lot in common with Lear. They're both very courageous people, and I'm sure, and Lear also really appreciates the loyalty of the fool. The fool is very loyal to Lear, and
is loyalty everything to Lear, basically? Because that's what it would seem from his behavior to his daughters, wanting, you know, all of them to profess how very, very much they loved him. Is that the main standard of treating people? If they're loyal, they're okay. If they're not?
Well, I mean, you don't build a kingdom unless you have, by yourself. You build it based on the work of other people and based on those people being loyal to you. You can't. He didn't unite the kingdom. He gave the orders to someone that was loyal to him, who gave orders to someone else who was loyal to him, who gave someone else who was loyal to him, and right down the line, that's how the kingdom was leered. I mean, so loyalty is basic. And but the thing is, he gave up his power, and there are other things about Lear's character, which there's another couple a couple of monologues here that when he starts into with Goneril. You remember initially he divides the kingdom into two, and
between Goneril and Regan.
Right. He divides the kingdom into two, and he says part of the deal is that he gets 100 knights that they have to sustain, and he'll live some time with Goneril, and then he'll go and live with Regan. Well, Goneril starts to complain about these knights.
And she cuts them
How
down.
would you like to have 100 guys, knights who have no war, in your house? And what do you think they're doing? They're drinking, they're looking for girls, and they're destroying. And she starts getting very angry.
Mm-hmm.
And Albany, who is Goneril's husband, says to Lear, because Lear is now furious at Goneril. He calls her a bastard, ungrateful bastard. Let me see that Albany says, I don't know why you're so angry. George, stay still because you're distracting me. He says, I don't know why you are so angry. And Albany says, it may be so, my lord.
Hear, nature, hear. Dear God is here. Suspend thy purpose. If thou didst intend to make this creature fruitful, into her womb convey sterility. Dry up in her the organs of increase, and from her derogate body never spring a babe to honor. If she must teem, create in her child of spleen, that it may live and be athwart this natured torment to her. Let it stamp wrinkles in her brow of youth, with cadent tears churn channels in her cheeks, turn all her mother's pains and benefits to laughter and contempt, that she may feel how sharper than a serpent's tooth it is to have a thankless child. Away, away.
So you see another side there of Lear's character.
Mm-hmm.
You see how vicious he is now?
No, sure.
Huh?
Absolutely.
How would you like if you were a girl and your father said something like that to you?
So a little terrifying, you might say.
Very terrifying. It shows you to the it shows you where he's going, and you could see who is the father of Goneril and Reagan.
Now that you've been studying the play for a while, what have you learned about Shakespeare's language? And is it difficult for you to adjust to it, especially since this is the first time you've been performing Shakespeare and his most demanding role, no less? How have you been able to deal?
How'd you like these monologues, by the way? Is it boring or how was it?
Incredible, incredible.
Yeah?
They retain some of the brilliance of the original.
Okay, let's see if I can do it. Now, what was the question? I'm sorry, you said a good question.
Well,
But,
how have
I'm asking you questions now.
Now that you've been studying the play, that you've gotten into it, into the sort of the skin of Shakespeare, his language, how have you been able to deal with that? How have you, how do you appreciate Shakespearean English, and is it difficult to deal with it?
It's difficult in the beginning, but after a while it's not. And you actually get to enjoy the different ways of saying things. It's funny. It's comical. It's very interesting. I enjoy, actually, I used to say, what the heck is he saying? But then when you get used to it, you actually enjoy, this is an interesting way of saying this. And Shakespeare does not waste a word. I mean, this is, you don't sneeze because it's too much. This play is so well written, so well constructed. There's not a wasted word. There's not a way that you would say, I could say this better. It's just so well done.
One of the interesting sort of subplots of King Lear is the nexus of relationships between Gloucester, his full and legitimate son, Edmund, and Edgar, the half or bastard son. And I was wondering, in your view, as you see the overview of the play, because Lear is in everything and has relationships with everybody, how do you see this relationship between Edgar and Edmund and Gloucester, their father? What does this tell us about the play? What kind of a role do these relationships play in the play? What do they tell us about it?
Okay, you see, now you're bringing in, when you asked me before, is this play about filial ingratitude? I mean, now you're bringing other themes into this play that we're talking about. You see how rich this is?
Sure.
Huh? You can't pick up a theme and say this is about one thing. And now you're talking about illegitimacy, now you're talking about illegitimacy, which is a major theme in this, and especially in modern society. Mm-hmm. Probably a more important theme in modern society, since we have so much parental abandonment here in this now time than and probably in the time of Shakespeare. To be a bastard was probably a much rarer thing than it is today. So you have to understand, I have been involved. This is a very complicated play, written by a superior human being, and I've been involved in Lear, and I haven't had that much time to totally understand Edgar and Edmund, and the only time I've really actually seen them was in the video of the play, and I haven't analyzed. Well, so
Which
Edgar.
version of the play did you look at? Which video?
Well, I don't know. We have our own video. We videotaped the reading.
But so that's what you've been looking at.
I've been working with that. Yeah.
Have you seen any other actors play?
No, he told me not to do that. And I agree with him.
Because in terms of
Well, you see, there is the bastard who feels that he was cheated, and so he's going to get what nature didn't give him. He was going to get on his own. Isn't that right?
That's right, yeah. In fact, there's a very interesting soliloquy that Edgar has that I had underlined here. He says, "Why bastard? Wherefore base?" Because base is what one would call a bastard in those days. "When my dimensions are as well compact, my mind is generous, and my shape as true as honest madam's issue," the mother of his full brother, his half-brother but fully legitimate brother. Do you understand Edgar's sort of machinations to inherit his father against his legitimate brother who normally would have gotten everything? I mean, is there something about that? Is there some sort of an important commentary about how children should be treated regardless of their legitimacy or not, probably?
What you see in the beginning of the play, Gloucester is always bragging about and bringing this up.
Oh, Edgar, my son, I went to sleep with his mother, and he was born.
So Gloucester the father is always going around telling everybody that this guy is, he's a bastard. He's a, how would you like your father to say, you see this one over here, he's a bastard, but this one here, he's legitimate. So, Gloucester itself is the cause of this. So in a sense, you might say a lot of the things that occur in these children are created by the parents.
And also Edgar rather, in the end, outwits both his father and his legitimate brother, because he convinces Gloucester, his father, that the legitimate brother is out to get him and to kill him. So I guess perhaps that the injustice of the different statuses breeds another injustice, which is the lie and the deception.
This is a thought that I've been having recently. When I see the wildness in youth, you have to understand that concept of what goes around comes around. That when you, as a parent, are wrong, and you know when you're wrong, because basically we do know when we're wrong, it comes back to you one way or another. And poor Gloucester had his eyes taken out, right?
Yes, indeed. Indeed.
Among other things.
Once Lear has distributed his lands to his two supposedly faithful daughters, Goneril and Regan, Goneril and Regan proceed to treat him with utter disrespect. Goneril first, cuts his retinue in half, then Regan totally
There's a monologue. There's a monologue I would like to go through to give you to show that.
Before you get to that, how do you view the role of these two daughters in the play, Goneril and Regan, and also Lear as their father in relationship to them? When do you as Lear realize that you have erred in the decision that you've made to divide your lands, your dominions between those two daughters, and how do you deal with it?
Okay, the moment that Goneril is going to wants to cut his retinue in half, he realizes, he says, I was wrong. He realizes it right there, and how does he deal with it? Mm-hmm. I already gave you one example how he deals with it, and how did he deal with it? How did he deal with it? He dealt with it through anger. He got furious. Now I showed you what he did to Goneril, right? He said,
"Into her womb convey sterility. Dry up in her the organs of increase, then from her derogate body never spring a babe to honor her."
So that's how he goes to Goneril. Now he is with Regan, right? Mm-hmm. And what they do is his main man his main servant, who is actually Kent in disguise, is placed in the stocks by Cornwall, the husband of Reagan. And he finds out about this. This is a big insult. He calls it worse than murder. To take his man, put him in the stock, is worse than murder to Lear. This is a total insult. And he says to Gloucester, he says, I want to speak to these people. And Gloucester calls him the fiery Duke, you know. Gloucester calls Cornwall the fiery Duke. I mean,
Sure.
so I mean, to a man like Lear, this pipsqueak is the fiery Duke. All right. So Lear said,
The king would speak with Cornwall. The dear father would with his daughter speak. Commands her service. Are they informed of this? My breath and blood, fiery. The fiery Duke. Tell the hot Duke that. No, but not yet. Maybe he is not well. Infirmity doth neglect all office whereto our health is bound. We are not ourselves when nature, being oppressed, commands the mind to suffer with the body. I'll forbear, and am fallen out with my more headier will, to take the indisposed and sickly fit for the sound man. Death on my state, wherefore should he sit here? This act of the Duke reminds me that this is remotion, persuades me that this act of the Duke and her is practice only. Give me my servant forth. Go tell the Duke and his wife I would speak with them now, presently. Bid them come forth and hear me. At their chamber door I'll beat the drum till it cries sleep to death. The king would speak with Cornwall. The dear father would with his daughter speak. Commands her service. Are they informed of this? My breath and blood. The fiery Duke. Tell the hot...
stop this camera. You
The king would speak with Cornwall. The dear father would with his daughter speak. Commands her service. Are they informed of this? My breath and blood. The fiery Duke. Tell the hot Duke that. No, but not yet. Maybe he is not well. Infirmity doth still neglect all office whereto our health is bound. We are not ourselves when nature, being oppressed, commands the mind to suffer with the body. I'll forbear, and am fallen out with my more headier will to take the indisposed and sickly fit for the sound man. Death on my state, wherefore should he sit here? This act persuades me that this remotion of the Duke and her is practice only. Give me my servant forth. Go tell the Duke and his wife I would speak with them. Now, presently, bid them come forth and hear me. Or at their chamber door I'll beat the drum till it cries sleep to death.
What does this tell us?
He's being treated as a second-class citizen, and
this is one of the last times in this play that well, it's not the last time, but he's still maintaining that he's the king. And he isn't the king. He gave up his power. And you asked me before, what is this play about? This play is about to all elderly parents who signed their homes over to their children so they don't have to pay taxes. so that their sons won't have to pay inheritance taxes or something. What is this play about? As you know, as you keep discussing, you find all the wonderful things and treasures are in this play. So what does this say? This say he's furious. So again, you say, well, how does he react? He reacts with anger. And you see that they're saying he wants to talk to them. Oh, I'm not feeling well right now. The fiery Duke is not feeling well. And she doesn't want to show up, you see.
In the end, of course, it's Cordelia who refused to make those extravagant pledges of love and devotion to her father, who actually saves him. How do you view her role in the play as a whole, and specifically in her relationship with her father? Who is she? What kind of character is she?
Well, you have to understand again that I don't totally understand all these characters and haven't looked into them enough. But the real force of good in this play, isn't she? Mm-hmm. She's sincere, she's honest, straightforward. If there's anything good in this play, I mean, there's a lot of good things in this play and good people in this play. But she's one of the, isn't she? Or does she ever evidence any pettiness or anything? She's always a large spirit, and she contrasts with her sisters, and so she's the symbol of hope in this dark world.
If you actually were Lear and not just played Lear,
I was chosen because I have a lot of Lear qualities, and people have been telling me that a long time, and I agree with that. I agree with that. I do have a lot of Lear qualities. Go ahead.
But if you were Lear himself and not just playing him, how might you have acted differently, do you think, in the various circumstances that arise in the play?
Monday morning quarterbacking? Oh, we have. Oh, that's a ridiculous question. I mean, I don't agree with that. I mean, well, how would I have reacted differently? I mean, you know, if the New York Jets hadn't thrown the ball to the right, if they went to the left, then we could have had our touchdown. I mean, but you really want me to answer that?
Yeah, sure.
Well, if I was foolish enough to not even see the fact that he should have known up front how Cordelia was going to answer him. He didn't. That right there reveals that he didn't even know his daughters. I mean, hadn't they told him all their lives? Didn't he? He hadn't spent any time with them all his life. Why should he have to ask this question in the court? Didn't he ever spend time with them? No, he didn't. He didn't even know what their questions were going. This was a surprise to him that Cordelia said this, because he says before he even asks the question to her, he says, "And now, although last, but not least, and now our joy." You know, to me, she was his joy. And actually, remember he says to Kent, "I thought to set my rest on her kind nursery." In other words, when we divided up, I was going to go live with her. I don't, you know, these other two, they're my daughters, they're okay.
And the other sisters, too, say that Cordelia was indeed the most beloved.
And so I, first of all, would have known my daughters, and I would have known ahead of time, but I still wouldn't have punished her for being young and foolish.
Eventually, of course, Lear goes mad. And I was wondering, what is your take on the development of Lear's madness? What form does it take? And how do you play it? how does your interpretation
Oh, I don't
perhaps
really-
change after that point?
I don't, as far as I understand his character now, I don't see Lear going mad. That might be somebody else's interpretation.
Well, when
I don't see him going mad. I see him losing it. I mean, I've lost it in my life already, and
well,
he's conscious all the time. He's look, when you lose power the way he lost power, when all your entire illusion is gone, it's a bitter emotional loss, and life didn't turn out the way you wanted it to turn out. And instead of having a kingdom, you have civil war and death. And I thought that he handled it pretty well. And I don't agree that he went mad. He loses it at some points.
well,
I mean, if he's standing out in the sky and he's yelling at the sky, I have yelled at the sky in my life. I have kneeled in the middle of a field and cried to God. I mean, by myself. Was I mad?
well, for example, in Act 3, Scene 6,
He loses it.
in Gloucester's farmhouse, he convenes a court with Edgar, the Fool, and Kent to try his unfaithful daughters, Regan and Goneril.
That's right.
When he no longer, of course, has any power to do anything.
But that's all he had left. Maybe that's all he had left. That's what
But
else
that's
could
sort
he
of
do?
madness, isn't it? Or how do you interpret that scene?
Well, that's open to interpretation.
Give me your take on it.
It's open to interpretation, depending on the director. You know, you could say that was a game that he was playing. That was it was therapeutic, or he did go mad for a while. But at the end, I mean, the ending of the play doesn't show a mad king. I mean, he's carrying Cordelia in his arms, and he attacks all these people, and at the end, he bemoans that they hung his fool. My poor fool is dead. And then he's holding her, and she says, "She's dead as earth." That's a wonderful line. She's dead as earth. I don't see any madness in him and the king. I'd see he loses it for a while, but to picture him as going mad, I don't agree with that. I'm not too sure. If from the reading that I've done with Chris Sanderson, the director, I don't think that he. I think he agrees with the way I've done that, and doesn't see that as a totally mad person.
How do you assess Gloucester's role in this? He gets blinded, all that.
Loyalty is the word, right?
Mhm.
He's loyal to the king.
In preparing for the role, what obstacles or difficulties have you encountered? And what do you have to bring to this role as an actor to really deal with it?
What I have to bring to it is
Not you as an individual person, but anyone who wants to play Lear, so to speak.
anyone who wants to play.
Your own
Huh?
experience, you can give yourself as an example.
Well, I think what I bring to it is my basic personality. I am a Leo character. I have a lot in common with him, and there's lots of I really do.
What do you have in common with Lear personally?
I'm a king.
Aside from that
Well,
detail.
it's true. I don't have any. I was just placed in a situation where I was not in control, and I almost freaked out completely. They put me in this guy wanted to put me into a rap video, and I almost killed the directors. I had to get out of there. So that's an important part of it. What else do you bring with it? You know that this play is about truth, caring about truth. And that's why I respect the play. It's why I'm doing it. I care about truth. Lear cared about truth. This play is about truth. It was written by a person who cared about truth. It's not absolute truth. It's not the truth that I believe in. But it's a struggle to understand truth. And people who thoroughly, and I don't claim to be one, thoroughly understand this play are going to be better people. The wisdom in here is unbelievable, and
Any difficulties in preparing the role for you?
it's been thoroughly and totally enjoyable. Being alone with Leah for the last 4 or 5 months in my kitchen, crying and swinging my arms. I mean, what else could have been better? Going through these monologues, being able to understand them by myself without any pressure. Yeah, I mean, everybody should do this. It's a wonderful experience. These monologues are fantastic. The whole play is fantastic. Now, you have to understand, I never get to see the other play. I never get to see the other characters that much. I mean, I'm involved with Leah, so I don't, at this point, totally understand these other characters that much. I'm a little weak with the other characters, which is not good, actually. I have to bring that up. That will get better with me as we do work on the play.
Just a few more questions I'd like to handle rather briefly, if we might. Even toward the end, when Cordelia is battling at the head of her husband's army, and her two sisters have proven themselves utterly disloyal and unconcerned with their father's welfare, Lear still refuses to see Cordelia. Not at the very end, but while the battle is going on. And that's despite the fact that he's already realized that he's made a mistake in dealing with Cordelia and not appreciated her for what she was. Why do you think that is?
I don't remember that part. Where is that?
Vanity, or is it?
I don't remember where he is refusing.
It's in Act 4, Scene 3.
Well, he's angry at all of them. Actually, that's probably where it's at. I don't remember exactly. It must be a very small thing.
In the end, do you think it's just Cordelia's goodness that keeps her loyal to her father and caring and wanting to collect him and take care of him and send her doctor over and all that? Is it duty? What is it about Cordelia that keeps her?
She's not revengeful, is she? And
No.
that is you're asking about what is this play about? This play is about so many things. She does not want to take revenge. He says to her when he sees her, he said, "If you have poison, I will take it. I will drink it." Okay, and she's saying, "No, I'm not here to take revenge on you." And she's always tender and respectful and loving to him. You could talk about revenge.
Why do you think that Reagan is so jealous of Goneril and Edmund?
Okay, I'm going to have to pass on that question because I'm going to pass on that question. Go ahead.
All right. Toward the end, Lear rails bitterly on the hypocrisy of humankind, if you recall. What has he learned by then, and what role does this theme of hypocrisy play in the play and to him as a character?
I'm going to pass on that too. Let me think about that. I don't see. Well, I mean, the daughters were very hypocritical, right? Mm-hmm. So, and the very fact that that he punished the one who was not hypocritical, that he was unjust in that punishment. I have to think more about that question.
I'd like to end on a personal note, if I might. In your preparation for playing this enormously difficult role of King Lear, what have you learned? What have the lessons been to you from reading the play, from preparing a role, trying to understand the whole process? What have you taken away from it in the end, do you think?
Well, first of all, is the feeling of being a king. I get that from here, and I've had, as I said, I was picked for this part from things I have. I mean, I know I have some feeling about being a king, but I get the feeling larger in this play. I get to feel also of sometimes when I have been not totally right with my parents, where where there was filial ingratitude. I mean, not to this degree, of course, but you have to feel that. You have to feel. You have to feel how you ask what is this play about? Again, what is this play about? If you're a son or a daughter, have you treated your mother and father? You have to see yourself there. Or if you're a mother or a father, how did you treat your sons? The pure pleasure of being alone with all these emotions, the pure pleasure of going through and learning these monologues, which I've gone through most of these monologues without the book, but only the first half of the play is what I know at this point, and real well, sort of well. I mean, what I did today in these interviews, in this interview is not that good, but I expect to be much better when I do the play. Just the observation of the pure depiction of these characters. These characters are in life. In my life, I've had an idealistic view of people. And I used to say, I love people. And when you see humanity really act so unnobly, the man gave you his kingdom. He gave you half the kingdom. Was it so expensive for you to let him have his toys for a few years before he died? Couldn't you give him his little toy of 100 nights? You couldn't please him a little bit? He didn't have to give you the whole thing, He didn't have to do that.
Well,
he could have killed you, three of you, and got a young wife and made a male baby and gave it to the male. I mean, he broke a lot of things to give that to you. You couldn't fight in your heart. You're going to throw him out into the woods.
Well, we're not going to throw you out into the woods. Special guest, Copernicus, performance artist, poet, philosopher, and now Shakespearean actor. All the best in your endeavors with King Lear, with the Guerrilla Repertory Theater, directed by Chris Sanderson. Thanks for being with us on the show today.
And thank you for this very interesting interview.